Everyone, this is Mrs. Mallard. This is Unit 1, Lesson 2 on epithelial tissues. And the objectives for this lesson is to cover the different types of epithelial tissues. You should be able to identify the types of tissues and also tell me where in the body these tissues are found. So those are the two goals for this lesson. So first of all, let's go ahead and back it up and just do a quick review of what a tissue is. So we've talked about cells making up tissues and tissues making up organs. But when you have cells that have a similar structure and perform a function that is the same or similar, when you have a group of those cells together, we refer to that as a tissue. So a tissue is just made up of a bunch of cells that have a similar structure, and they usually all have a common function. So in this unit, we're going to be covering 4 types of tissues. Epithelial is what we're going to do today. And one of the key words to remember with epithelial is the word covers. So these are the types of epithelial tissues will cover outside of organs, will line the inside of the organs, your skin, which covers your whole body. For example, would be another type of epithelial tissue. So a key word to go with epithelial is covers. The other tissues we're going to talk about is connective. So the key word with connective is that it supports. We're going to talk about muscle tissue, and we're also going to talk about nervous. Today, we are only going to focus on epithelial tissues. So first thing, before we dive into the different parts or the different types of epithelial tissue, I wanted just to kind of lay a little bit of groundwork here. So first of all, when you look at the word of an epithelial tissue, the first word is going to tell you the number of layers. So if they use the number, or if they use the term simple, it just means that there's a single layer of cells. So there's like one layer of cells. So that's what you see here. This is a layer of cells, and notice it's just one cell thick. Now, if the cells are stacked on top of each other, like you see in the second picture here, we refer to those multiple layers of cells. The term we're going to use is stratified. So simple means one layer of cell, and stratified means that there's multiple layers of cells. The other thing that defines epithelial tissues is the shape. All right, so we have 3 shapes we're going to be using to define our tissue. Squamous means that the cells are going to look flat and like skinny. All right, so if you took a cell and you like kind of smushed it flat, that's what squamous is going to look like. Cuboidal, if you look at the word, it almost looks like it has the word cube in it. Cuboidal is going to look like little cubes or little boxes. So if you look at the picture here, you can kind of see how the cell sort of has like a cube or like a box shape. All right. The third shape that we're going to be talking about is columnar. So in the word, you can actually see the word column. So if you think of a column, it's tall and skinny. So this is a picture of cells that are the columnar shape. So they're going to be taller. They're going to be taller and they're going to be skinny. So those are columnar cells. So just a reminder, the first word is going to tell us how many layers. The second word is going to give us the shape of the cell. All right, so the first type, so there's 6 different types of epithelial tissue. The first type is called simple squamous. So once again, don't let the word scare you. You want to break it down. Simple means it has one layer of cells, and squamous means it's going to look squished. Okay? So simple squamous, one layer of cells, and it's going to look smushed. This type of tissue, the advantage is that it allows materials to pass through easy. Anything like if materials have to go through, it's very easy to pass through because the cell is only one layer thick, so it's easy for materials to go through. Any type of processes like filtration, all right, which we're going to see in the kidney, where you have substances that have to be filtered out of the blood that's going through your kidneys. These are areas where you're going to have simple squamous tissue. Okay. Another one, the air sacs in your lungs. Okay. So the air sacs in your lungs, this is where when you breathe in oxygen, oxygen has to go across the cells to go into your bloodstream. And so the air sacs in your lungs are very thin in order to allow oxygen to pass through. I also mentioned filtration in the kidneys. As blood goes into your kidneys, the job of your kidneys is to basically filter waste out of your blood. And of course, that waste ends up going into your urine or forming urine. So this is another area where this type of tissue is going to be found. You want it to be nice and thin so materials can go through very easily. All right, here's just kind of what it looks like underneath the microscope. This is looking at it above. And then looking at it from the side, you can see that it almost looks like a line. If somebody drew like a purple or pink line, that shows that it's one cell layer thick. All right, the second type is simple cuboidal. So once again, simple means it's one layer thick, and cuboidal means it's going to be like this little boxy cube shape. So we're going to find these in tubes in the kidneys as well. A lot of these cells are going to be, or this type of tissue is going to be found in ducts where there has to be some sort of secretion, so enzyme secretions. For example, like your salivary glands, which produce the saliva or spit. Those glands or the ducts, the little tubes of those glands are going to be lined with this type of tissue. So secretion and absorption are going to be simple cuboidal. All right, so underneath the microscope, you can kind of see it looks like a ring of cells. And if you notice the big circle here, this is the nucleus. Cuboidal cells are easy to pick out because usually their nucleus is like right in the middle, and the nucleus is very defined. It's like nice and round and plump. And real easy to pick out. This ring, this would be like if you took a tube and you cut it in half and you were looking at it from one end. That's what you're looking at here underneath underneath the microscope here. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to our third type of tissue, simple columnar. So remember, simple means it's going to be one layer thick, and columnar means our cells are going to be tall and skinny. Okay, so we've got, this is referred to as the basement membrane. So you can kind of think of this as like the bottom of the cell. That's where the cell starts, and then they're nice, tall, and skinny. One of the easy ways to look at this underneath or find these in the microscope is that the nuclei are usually going to be located towards like the bottom. All right, they're not going to be at the top. They're not going to be in the middle. They're going to be towards the bottom of these cells. All right, the purpose of these cells is to secrete mucus, digestive fluids, and they're also going to absorb nutrients. So this type of tissue is going to line your digestive tract. So as food is making its way through your digestive tract, the simple columnar epithelial that's in your digestive tract is going to secrete mucus. That mucus is going to help keep moving basically kind of the processed or digest food, going to keep it moving along. And the other thing is that in your digestive tract is you want to absorb nutrients. So these cells are going to allow nutrients from the food that you eat to be absorbed. These cells are also going to be lining the uterus. All right, so that would be another place where you're going to find simple columnar epithelial tissue. All right, let's move on to the fourth one. Oh, before we do that, we've got our picture here. This is what I was talking about, like underneath the microscope. You can kind of see how they're tall and skinny, but if you notice the nuclei, they're sort of all lined up towards the bottom of these cells. So that's one way to help pick out what these cells look like underneath the microscope. All right, our fourth type is called pseudostratified columnar. So that root term pseudo means false. All right, so maybe biology, you remember learning about pseudopods, like the amoebas have a pseudopod, or maybe you've heard of someone who writes a book and they have a pseudonym, means that they write a book, but like they use a fake name because they don't want people to know their real name. So pseudo means fake. stratified, we know that stratified is referring to multiple levels of cells. So literally this means like fake multiple levels. All right. Columnar, we know that the cells are tall and skinny. All right. So what this means is when you look at this under the microscope, it looks like the cells are stacked on top of each other, that they're stratified. It looks, or it appears, that the cells are stratified. But on further notice, all of these cells that you see here, notice each one of these actually touches what's called the basement membrane here, okay? So each one of these, if you look very closely, each one of these actually touches the basement membrane. Okay, so it looks like it's stratified, like there's multiple layers, but in reality, it's just one layer of cells. One of the ways you can tell pseudostratified from simple columnar is that the nuclei are at different levels. Okay, remember with simple columnar, all of the nuclei were kind of at the bottom, whereas pseudostratified, the nuclei are kind of scattered at multiple levels. Okay, these particular cells also could possibly have these little extensions called cilia on top of the cells, and what those cilia do is they are able to move. They are able to move. So, for example, this says that these cells can also secrete mucus. Literally, what they do is mucus gets secreted, and the cilia is able to. It's kind of like a conveyor belt. It's going to keep the mucus moving, and so an example would be in the lining of your lungs, you have pseudostratified columnar cells. And if you breathe things like dust, any kind of microorganisms that you breathe in, it gets trapped in that mucus. And what the cilia do is that it moves the mucus along to keep keep the lining of your lungs clear. All right. So there is a purpose to that. So the main part that main part of the body you're going to find this type of tissue in is the upper respiratory tract. All right, so lining of your lungs, your trachea, larynx, nasal passages, for example, are all going to be lined with these type of cells. Now, some of you might have heard of the term whooping cough. Sometimes we hear in the news little outbreaks of whooping cough. And whooping cough is caused by a bacteria. And what that bacteria does is it actually basically paralyzes the cilia so that the cilia are not able to move the mucus. And so as a result, these people end up, your body, the way it tries to break up and get rid of mucus is through coughing. And so your body develops what's called a whooping cough to try to clear the lungs of the mucus. The problem is the cilia are essentially paralyzed. They can't do their job to clear the mucus. And so your body tries to clear it through by having a whooping cough. So there's kind of a nice little health connection there. This is underneath the microscope, pseudostratified. Once again, you see these little circles. These are the nuclei. They're all scattered, all right, at multiple levels. They're scattered at multiple levels. And so really, it's really just one layer of cells, but it looks like it's multiple layers. And here, this like pink fuzzy stuff at the top, that's the cilia coming off of the top of those cells. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to stratified squamous. So stratified, once again, is multiple layers. Squamous means our cells are going to be basically are going to look smushed, are going to look flat. So stratified squamous epithelial tissue. This is the tissue that forms the outer layer of your skin. And this is also the type of tissue that's going to line your throat and your mouth. Okay. So notice that we've got, if you look at this, this picture, stratified squamous, if you notice at the bottom, the cells are more cuboidal. All right. They look more like cubes, but as we go up, the cells get flattened to the point that they're totally kind of flattened at the top here. Okay. So that's that's a quality or characteristic of stratified squamous. It's multiple layers. A lot of times students get confused because it's cuboidal down here and then squamous at the top. You always want to look at the cells at the top because what's happening is these cells are dividing through mitosis, and as they move up to the top, they get just more and more flat. So function-wise, it makes sense that this particular tissue forms your skin because your skin is exposed to all kinds of things. It's exposed to heat, it's exposed to cold, it's exposed to sunlight, it's exposed to things scratching up against it. So because we have these multiple layers, all right, that actually helps to protect. All right, that actually helps to protect because you have all these multiple layers that are able to protect basically the underlying tissue. All right, so if it's cold, if it's hot, exposed to the sun, things scratching against your skin has these multiple layers to protect it. This is what it looks like, stratified squamous underneath the microscope. If you see this black line where it goes from here to here, that is this kind of, I guess, like darker purple. This is more pink down here. This is your stratified squamous that you're looking at here. So this is our stratified squamous. We can see that there's multiple layers. The purple represents the nuclei, and you can see down here, you can really see the nuclei well, but when you get to the top, it's basically flat, and that kind of gives you an indication of the fact that, okay, up here the cell's flat, down here it's more cuboidal. All right, our last one is called transitional, and this is kind of like the tricky one out of all of them because it can look squamous when it's stretched, or it can look cuboidal when it's not stretched. So this type of epithelial, it has that word transitional, so it has the ability to transition kind of between being stretched and not stretched. This type of tissue you're going to find lining urinary organs. So think of the bladder. So the bladder holds your urine. So when your bladder is full of urine, that urine is pressing up against the side of the bladder. And so the tissue that makes up the lining of the bladder is basically going to get smushed. It's going to get stretched because you've got that urine pushing up against it. And so the cells are going to look more squamous. They're definitely going to look more squamous. Now, after you go to the bathroom, the urine is going to leave the bladder. And so now up here, there's no urine pressing up against the side. So the cells are in a relaxed state. They're not stretched out. And so at this point, they're going to look more like a cuboidal shape. So a transitional epithelial tissue, it depends on if it's stretched or relaxed, whether it's going to look more cuboidal or whether it's going to look more squamous. So this is what it looks like underneath the microscope. You can see here where the number 2 is. This is showing that it's stretched, okay? And you can kind of see that the cells look more flat if you're looking at it from the side. And then the number 1 here is showing that it's this is relaxed. So you can see that the cells are going to end up looking more cuboidal than over here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our lesson on epithelial tissue. So remember, the 2 things you need to know is you need to know where these tissues are found at in the body. And you also need to be able to identify, if you are given pictures, you're going to need to be able to identify, is it simple squamous? Is it pseudostratified columnar? Is it simple columnar? So if you're given a picture, are you able to identify the type of tissue? All right, and that concludes our lesson on epithelial tissue.